Look at that, gentlemen. That's a textbook Feeble grip. She's going to pull that shot a mile left, the instructor's voice, a grating mix of arrogance and condescension, echoed across the windswept firing line. The crowd of young, eager soldiers, barely out of basic, snickered nervously. Their eyes flicked from the instructor, Sergeant First Class Hayes, to the woman he was mocking. She stood apart, a study in stillness amidst the restless energy of the range. She appeared older than the rest, maybe 40, her uniform immaculate but clearly lived in, the creases earned through years of service, not just a single pass of an iron. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, functional knot, and her face was a mask of placid neutrality. She offered no reaction. No flinch, no defensive glance, no tightening of the jaw. Her world had seemingly shrunk to the M210 enhanced sniper rifle resting on its bipod before her. As Hayes postured, she remained absorbed, her gaze fixed on the distant heat shimmer rising from the Nevada desert floor. In the observation tower high above, a general leaned forward, binoculars pressed to his eyes, a flicker of something unreadable in his expression as he watched her stance, her utter lack of response. If you believe that true strength is proven not with words, but with action, type competence in the comments below. Sergeant Hayes, basking in the attention of his captive audience, continued his lecture, using the silent woman as his primary teaching aid for what not to do. See, in modern warfare, he pontificated, pacing back and forth with a self-important swagger. It's about aggressive posture, dominating the weapon system. The old ways, the gentle touch, that's from a bygone era. Obsolete, he gestured dismissively toward her. With all due respect, ma'am, he began, the title dripping with sarcastic formality. Did they even issue optics this powerful when you first enlisted? The insult hung in the dry air, sharp and ugly. A few of the younger men laughed again, though this time it was weaker, laced with a growing discomfort. The woman, Master Sergeant Morgan, remained a statue of professional calm. Her silence was not empty. It was dense, weighted, a vacuum that sucked the air out of Hayes's blustering performance. While he preached about strength, her hands, the very hands he'd insulted, moved with a quiet, practiced efficiency. She made a minute adjustment to the windage knob on her scope, a click so faint it was swallowed by the breeze. She settled her cheek against the stock, the worn with a familiar comfort. Her breathing was a slow, controlled rhythm, an internal metronome counting down to a moment only she could perceive. The contrast was stark, his storm of empty words against her fortress of silent preparation. The formal test began, a single shot that would define the day. The target was a steel plate, a mere speck at 1,800 meters, a distance that bordered on the fantastical for most shooters. It was the ultimate trial of skill, a cold-bore shot where the first round had to be perfect. The wind, a fickle and treacherous ghost, gusted unpredictably across the vast expanse, making the challenge exponentially harder. Hayes smirked, folding his arms, the picture of a man expecting to be proven right. "Let's see it then," he muttered, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. But Master Sergeant Morgan was in her own world. The narrative of the range, the whispers, the arrogance, all of it had faded into an irrelevant background hum. Her movements were a symphony of economy, a lifetime of training distilled into a few perfect seconds. Her left hand gently cupped the stock, her right index finger finding its familiar place on the trigger. There was no hesitation, no wasted energy. She was not aiming the rifle. She was part of it, an organic component in a system of steel and glass. She took one final, slow breath, exhaling half of it and holding the rest, finding that perfect, still point between heartbeats where the world freezes. The pressure she applied to the trigger was not a pull, but a slow, deliberate squeeze, smooth and constant, a force so gradual it was almost imperceptible. The firing pin struck the primer with a soft, almost polite click. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the impossible occurred. A full, clear second after the subtle sound of the firing mechanism, a distinct ping echoed back from the horizon. the unmistakable sound of a copper-jacketed bullet striking hardened steel. It was a sound that arrived out of sequence, a messenger that had outrun its own report. A beat later, the concussive crack of the rifle's supersonic blast finally rolled over the firing line, a thunderclap arriving long after the lightning had already struck. A collective, audible gasp swept through the line of soldiers. They stared downrange, then at each other, their faces a mixture of confusion and utter awe. The physics of it didn't make sense. Sound should not be so profoundly defeated by its own projectile. Sergeant Hayes stood frozen, his jaw slack, his face pale beneath his tan. His smug certainty had evaporated, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated disbelief. "No," he stammered, the word barely a whisper. "No way. That's not possible." The silence that followed was absolute, deeper and more profound than any noise, broken only by the lonely whistle of the wind that Master Sergeant Morgan had so perfectly and utterly conquered. The creak of the observation tower's steps announced the arrival of authority. General Wallace descended, his boots crunching softly on the gravel as he strode purposefully toward the firing line. He moved with an unhurried grace that commanded attention, his presence instantly quelling the rising murmur among the soldiers. He didn't spare a single glance for the shell-shocked Sergeant Hayes. His eyes, sharp and discerning, were fixed solely on Master Sergeant Morgan, who was already methodically clearing her weapon, her task complete. The general stopped, his gaze sweeping from her calm demeanor to the distant target. "Aid," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the unmistakable weight of command. "Bring me the personnel file from Master Sergeant Morgan." Now, the young captain at his side snapped a crisp, "Yes, sir," and practically ran toward the administrative building. The general walked to the high-powered spotting scope Hayes had been using, bent down, and peered through the eyepiece. He was silent for a long moment. When he stood up, he took off his cap, holding it in his hand in a subtle gesture of respect. He looked at the tiny, perfect circle punched directly in the center of the distant steel plate, a testament to a level of skill that bordered on artistry. The aide returned, breathless, holding out a simple manila folder. General Wallace took it, opened it, and let his eyes scan the page for a moment. Then he turned to face the assembled soldiers, his voice ringing out with the clarity of a bell, each word a chisel chipping away at the foundation of Hayes's ignorant assumptions. "Master Sergeant Evelyn Morgan," he began, reading from the file. "Unit, United States Army Marksmanship Unit, Senior Instructor and Competitive Shooter. Formerly assigned to Joint Special Operations Command, Special Missions Unit designation redacted." He paused, letting the weight of that sink in. "Combat deploiement, 11. Confirmed hostile engagements beyond 1,500 meters, 47. Recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross. Winner of the Carlisle Trophy for Excellence in Advanced Ballistics 3 times." He looked up from the page, his eyes locking onto Hayes. "She literally wrote the book on extreme long-range ballistics that you're supposed to be teaching. Sergeant." He closed the folder with a sharp snap. Then he turned back to Morgan, who had remained perfectly still throughout the recitation of her incredible career. He faced her, brought his heels together, and rendered a slow, perfect salute. "Master Sergeant," he said, his voice thick with reverence. "It is a profound honor to see you work again, ma'am." The story of his shot spread through the base like wildfire. By evening chow, it was all anyone was talking about. It was no longer just a rumor, it was gospel. They gave it a name, the Morgan Beat, that surreal, awe-inspiring moment when the sound of impact arrives before the sound of the weapon that fired it. It became more than just a tale of marksmanship. It transformed into a parable, a stark lesson against the poison of arrogance and the folly of judging a book by its cover. In the barracks that night, the young soldiers didn't rehash Hayes's flawed lecture. They spoke in hushed, reverent tones about Master Sergeant Morgan. They talked about her silence, her unwavering calm under pressure, her complete and total focus. They dissected her economy of motion, the way she seemed to exist in a pocket of tranquility amidst the chaos. The rifle she had used, a standard M210, but one clearly bearing the marks of 1,000 hours of practice and meticulous care, was now viewed as a legendary artifact. The legend of her competence had, in a single afternoon, completely eclipsed the authority of Hayes's rank, proving that true respect is never found on a collar, but is forged in the crucible of undeniable skill. The following morning, a different Sergeant Hayes appeared at the range. The swagger was gone, replaced by a rigid posture of humility. He walked directly to where Master Sergeant Morgan was cleaning her rifle, a task she performed with the same meditative focus she applied to everything else. He stood before her, waiting to be acknowledged. When she finally looked up, her expression was neutral, expectant. "Master Sergeant," Hayes began, his voice clear and steady, stripped of all its previous bravado. "My conduct yesterday was unprofessional and unacceptable. My assumptions were ignorant. I was wrong. I apologize. There was no justification, no excuse. It was a clean, direct admission of failure." Morgan looked at him for a long moment, her gaze searching. Then she gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "Understood, Sergeant," she said, her voice even and calm. "Focus on your wind calls today. They're trickier from the east." It was not absolution, but a directive to return to the work, to the profession. Later that day, she was seen with one of the youngest soldiers, the one who had snickered the loudest. Her head was bent close to his, her voice low as she quietly explained the subtle relationship between spin drift and humidity, her actions demonstrating a commitment to lifting others up that shamed any impulse to ever tear them down. Years passed, but the legacy of that day endured. The firing point where she had taken a shot became known unofficially among the sniper community as Morgan's line. To make a clean shot from there was to pay homage to the standard she had set. The story of the Morgan beat was formally integrated into the training doctrine for new instructors at the sniper school, often taught by a much wiser, more thoughtful Sergeant First Class Hayes. It served as the ultimate case study in professional humility, a permanent warning against the dangerous blind spots of ego and prejudice. Master Sergeant Morgan's legend wasn't just about a single miraculous shot. It was about the quiet, unwavering philosophy behind it. Her legacy wasn't a name etched on a trophy, but the culture of silent competence she had reinforced. She taught an entire generation of warriors that the most formidable weapon in their arsenal was not their rifle, but their discipline. The respect she commanded was absolute precisely because she never once demanded it. She had proven, in one deafening moment of impact, that true authority is silent until the second it needs to be heard. In a world filled with noise, with boasting, with the clamor for attention, there is a different kind of power. It is the power of demonstrated skill, of quiet confidence, of a competence so profound it needs no announcement. True strength is not measured in the volume of the claim, but in the precision of the result. It is the steady hand in the storm, the calm voice in the chaos, the silent professional whose actions create their own thunder. Master Sergeant Morgan's bullet didn't just strike a target. It shattered a wall of ignorant assumptions, leaving behind a silence where respect could finally grow. Her legacy is a testament to the enduring truth that the most powerful statements are not those that are shouted from the rooftops, but those that are delivered with perfect accuracy at extreme range, arriving long before their own sound. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud arrogance and where silent precision defines true worth, subscribe to Unknown Hero Stories.